You know the excuses. We can't afford foreign aid anymore. Or we're wasting money pouring it into these poor countries. Or we can't buy friends. Other countries just take the money and dislike us for giving it. Well, all these excuses are just that, excuses, and they're dead wrong.
In this video, Luke Beasley uses footage of Ronald Reagan's speeches to refute Donald Trump's most recent actions here in terms of USAID and other things. And I think it's really interesting because Ronald Reagan is kind of held up as this gold standard of conservatism. But if you listen to Reagan talk, you know, it's clear how far what we consider the sort of middle of the road, how far that needle has moved to the right. Because a lot of what you listen to Ronald Reagan saying, not everything, but a lot of what you listen to Ronald Reagan sort of espouse in his speeches feels remarkably moderate in 2025. Anyway, let's check it out. You could check out Luke Beasley's channel if you want. I think he does a really good job of this stuff too. I haven't done a ton of his videos so far, but I like this one, so I'd like to watch it with you. I will share my opinion as we go. That's what I'm doing here. And then I'd like to ask what you think in the comments, but let's roll it.
We've been trying so hard to get through to MAGA, to Trump, to any of those who are rooting on the Elon-led efforts to dismantle the federal workforce, certain programs, get rid of institutions like the USAID and Department of Education, and we're hearing now about health centers losing their funding, and we'll go through all of it in this segment. We have so much to go through and not enough time to do it, so let's move quickly. I haven't been able to get through making the argument about USAID, so let's see if Ronald Reagan can do it, the former standard bearer, leader of the Republican Party. While you watch, please do click the subscribe button. This used to be the embodiment of the Republican Party. Let's see if Republicans agree with his argument here.
It has to do with something we call the national interest, which is something every American has a stake in. Yet in the last few years, every old and worn excuse for not giving adequate financial support for these goals has received a new and more sympathetic hearing on Capitol Hill. You know the excuses. We can't afford foreign aid anymore. Or we're wasting money pouring it into these poor countries. Or we can't buy friends. Other countries just take the money and dislike us for giving it. Well, all these excuses are just that, excuses, and they're dead wrong. Give away too much money without return? The truth is that now and historically we spent very little on foreign affairs in terms of the overall budget of our government. In the late 40s and early 50s, during the time of the Marshall Plan, we spent 11 cents of every federal dollar on foreign affairs. That figure has dropped to 4 cents on the dollar by 20 years ago and has continued to fall until in recent years we've been spending less than 2 cents of each dollar to support our foreign policy. And that's money that gets a big return. Is there anyone who believes that we in America would live in as good a world and be as secure if we could turn back the clock and undo the Marshall Plan? Today, our economic development aid goes to those same countries in the developing world that provide some 35% of the market for our merchandise exports, more than the total volume of U.S. goods purchased by Western Europe, Eastern Europe.
Okay, he continues. And I do want to note, none of this is about overly glorifying the Republican Party of the past or looking past the massive wrongdoings and systemic impacts negatively that Reagan had, but instead saying, if even he was on board with the argument we're making back then, it's wild that the Republican Party is where it is now. Before looking at more, we'll also look at Kennedy advocating this. The Daily News Online here has a report. White House opens funding spigot for DOGE expenses. Just as he's dismantling and taking away funds from necessary programs, we'll get into that more in depth as we go through this segment. Notice that he's actually spending quite a bit of money. Not the same level of money that these funds are sort of the scale is very different, but on a personal level, it's strange they need this much money for the work that they're doing, despite fabricating the United States DOGE service out of thin air. President Musk has already grown his unelected bureaucracy to lay claim to nearly $7 million of American taxpayer funding. House Appropriations Ranking Member Rosa DeLauro said in a statement, she said that amount is nearly twice the annual salaries and expenses budget of the White House.
What? $7 million?
So burning through some cash there. It's not the same as the billions that they're going after, obviously, but instead an example of just Elon and a few of his friends need that much money for 1 week of work. What are we talking about? Another update here. The Substack Popular Information Judd Legum here writing last week, Popular Information broke down the offer that Trump administration was making to millions of federal employees to induce them to resign voluntarily. The Trump administration wanted federal employees to believe that if they agreed to resign effective September 30th, they would receive their full payment until then and not have to work for the next 8 months. I talked about this too, and it seemed like a buyout offer, as has been described. We'll pay you through a certain period of time if you'll go ahead and resign now. But they caught the DOGE effort here. The most important part of the contract released by OPM is Section 13. It states that federal employees who accept the agreement waive their right to enforce the agreement in court or any other forum. So actually, they're not getting any commitment of a buyout, but they are being pushed to resign.
Unbelievable. That was a joke on The Simpsons. I can't remember the episode, but it was like some advertisement. It's like, I guarantee it. Not a guarantee.
Frightening stuff. It's not just Ronald Reagan who's advocated on the other side of the USAID argument. It also is Secretary of State who's currently helping with the dismantling, Marco Rubio.
Going to gut the agency, though, since taking office. The first thing they really took aim at, he has called its leaders radical left lunatics.
They went totally crazy what they were doing, and the money they were giving to people that shouldn't be getting it and to agencies and others that shouldn't be getting it. Was a shame. So they're tremendous fraud. I love the concept of it. Yeah, sure. I love the concept, but they turned out to be radical left lunatics.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and that is Marco Rubio, a very serious Secretary of State, who is also criticizing USAID tonight and just took it over as part of this. They're trying to get rid of it, so they threw it in with the State Department. That he had previously, though, praised the organization repeatedly, not just once, but repeatedly, something he clearly believed. And our K-File has the tape. So K-File's Andrew Kaczynski joins me now. So what did you find?
Yeah, that's right. Now, Rubio spent years praising both foreign aid and USAID as a vital part of promoting American interest and American foreign policy. In fact, he's now basically echoing some of the attacks that he once dismissed. We found time and again across his 14-year Senate career that he was constantly praising and defending foreign aid. Let's listen to just a few of what he said over the years.
Okay.
We don't have to give foreign aid. We do so because it furthers our national interest. That's why we give foreign aid. Now, obviously, there's a component to foreign aid that's humanitarian in scope, and that's important too. I promise you it's going to be a lot harder to recruit someone to anti-Americanism, anti-American terrorism, if the United States of America was the reason why they're even alive today. Anybody who tells you...
And a bunch of examples, as of even very recently, Marco Rubio arguing the opposite thing as what he's arguing now. I did a whole segment diving in deep to the specifics of the implications of getting rid of USAID and the flaws in the MAGA argument right now. So I won't go over all of that again, but instead play for you now John F. Kennedy, excuse me. So used to saying Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
The presence of the United States as a leading power in the free world is involved in your work directly. The people who are opposed to aid should realize that this is a very powerful source of strength for us. It permits us to exert influence for the maintenance of freedom. If we were not so heavily involved, our voice would not speak with such vigor. And as we do not want to send American troops to a great many areas where freedom may be under attack, we send you. And you working with the people in those countries to try to work with them in developing the economic thrust of their country so that they can make a determination that they can solve their problems without resorting to totalitarian control and becoming part of the bloc.
Right. So this is a way of promoting in a peaceful manner principles that we value, and then on a basic level engaging in humanitarian efforts. And we've talked about, again, the segments I referenced and numerous now, how you have people who are treating children with diseases who have life-saving medication they no longer have the funds for, and they are having to shut down. But now it's going further beyond USAID, and that's what I want to talk about now as well. You have Congressman Seth Magaziner saying, I am hearing from community health centers all across Rhode Island that their federal funding has been cut off today. Community health centers. This is the day after Elon's team gained access to the federal health payment system. Dangerous and totally unacceptable. And then Senator Slotkin also hearing this from her constituents.
We are here all night because of the nomination of a guy that probably most people in Michigan I know have never heard of, Russell Vought. He's to potentially run an agency that most people have probably never heard of, the Office of Management and Budget. But what they don't know about this wonky side of Washington, they felt last week. They felt it. The Trump administration froze every single dollar that was going out across the country, not for a future budget, but for money that had already been appropriated by this body. That money had already been planned for and in use by thousands upon thousands of organizations and people. So we heard an unprecedented number of calls in my office. We heard from people in law enforcement. I had deputy sheriffs in my office saying, hey, we get a chunk of money to pursue sexual assault cases. We hire deputies with that money. Do I need to fire those deputies or let them go? We heard from cancer researchers and scientists who said, I'm trying to research better treatment for cancer, and it's just been cut off. One of the most painful calls that I got was from a doctor at the National Institutes of Health, pediatric oncologist, who does trials, critical trials for very sick children, who said, I don't know if I can continue my trial or not. We heard from Head Start. We heard from our superintendents. We heard from people, Democrat.
And now as the days proceed and the gaslighting continues on this, it's important that I say today. So she's reflecting, and then you saw the congressman today talking about funds are being cut off to programs that are so necessary. We're talking about life-saving programs. Yesterday, looking at an example of another congressperson who had been reached out from constituents about, I think it was addiction relief or recovery or something to that effect. Who knows what's next as he goes from one to the next, to the next, to the next. Elon, that is. And so when they tell us, and this is what we have to make sure people know, when they tell us, no, that was just a little temporary mix-up. That was just a little giggle and a gag. That's not actually going to be the policy. They're lying. When they tell us it's not going to impact anything people rely on, which was their language, that's a lie. We're seeing it in people's lives. They're losing access to funds for crucial, not DEI, which is what we're only getting rid of DEI. Well, if DEI now stands for any initiatives that don't directly fund Elon Musk, then yes, maybe a lot of stuff is DEI. And Elon Musk, I should note, himself has benefited so much from massive funding from government grants that now he's trying to cut off for other people. Close the door behind you type of mentality. CNN reports 4 days after Donald Trump's inauguration, Elon Musk's top lieutenants at the Treasury Department asked its acting secretary, a career civil servant, to immediately shut off all USAID, no warning, no nothing, payments, using the department's own ultra-sensitive payment processing system. There was initially pushback, but obviously they ended up being successful. Politico then noting that his so-called Department of Government Efficiency's early moves have violated the Privacy Act and cybersecurity laws, according to legal experts. But who's in charge of enforcing? The executive branch. Who's giving him this power? The executive branch. A judge, it looks like, is going to try to stop an illegal assault on the federal workforce and federal programs, but I don't know if he's going to be able to, or she's going to be able to. A federal judge said Wednesday was inclined to issue a temporary injunction prohibiting entities outside the Treasury Department, including Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, from accessing sensitive taxpayer records from the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. If it feels like I'm being pants on fire urgent, it's because I am. If it feels like I'm sounding the alarm a lot, it's because I am. And we're in a red alert moment. Because what happened was a judge said, stop, you can't keep cutting off these federal funds. And they kept doing it, as now we're learning. A judge here looks poised to say, stop, you can't just walk in as a private citizen, take control in violation of both civil service protections and also privacy laws, and just seize control over all this Treasury Department stuff, and then just start cutting off legally mandated funds. But I'm sure he's going to keep doing it. I do want to address quickly and actually let former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who is a Republican, was a Republican, but MAGA pushed him out, sort of deal, talk about their latest argument, which is, oh no, Elon's finding fraud or abuse. The only fraud and abuse is him, because the condom story was completely false and debunked. The millions of dollars on trans opera, wrong. They're just making up stuff or distorting things. And then what's the latest? Politico, money. Adam Kinzinger will address that here.
So in case you're not watching, which God bless you for not, fake agency DOGE is pretending like they found some scandal that USAID initially gave $8 million to Politico for fake news all over Europe. Well, here's the truth. The truth is the entire federal government over the last basically 10 years gave $8 million to Politico for access to Politico Pro, which is a news database. By the way, my office had it. The Speaker of the House's office spent $10,000 last year on it. So actually, the House of Representatives was, I think, close to a quarter of the entire spending on Politico. Again, every office gets to buy access to this news agency and various news agencies. You'll see it to the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, etc. They tried to pretend like this is money given to USAID for some misinformation. Pure lie. By the way, I hope Politico sues the crap out of them, because that's the only way they're going to win this back. But here's the interesting point. They're making a big deal about this. How much money has the federal government for services, for legitimate services, given to SpaceX? How much has the federal government given to Tesla? When is DOGE going to audit, again, fake agency DOGE, it's not real, when is it going to audit those contracts and cancel those contracts and say that those contracts are corrupt when they weren't? Probably never. So what's really happening here? They're trying to say, look at the hand over here, while the corruption hand keeps doing whatever it wants. Democrats, another free message for you. How come there's not many people out there saying this stuff? Anyway, take.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying, Adam. I guess I'm not who he's talking about, though.
Wow, yeah, that is an enormous amount of context. It strikes me, just watching Trump talk about it, how who knew we opened the doors of this agency and it's been run by radical leftist lunatics. Like, in my mind, I imagine you crack open the door of this bureaucratic office building and it's like a bunch of crazy ISIS fighters, chanting and waving their guns. Like, what are you talking about? That is insane. Donald Trump is insane. It's just crazy. And then you see these other people like Rubio or whoever else, like these people he's parroting this, we had to put a stop. What are you talking about? I mean, up is down, left is right. It's just the most bonkers baloney you've ever heard. Let me know what you think in the comments.